Rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good evening and welcome to all of you here to the Constitutional Hill Women's Prison. My name is Zeenat Adam. I'm the Executive Director of Conscience Collective, and we're honored to be hosting Rana Ayyub in collaboration with the Afro-Middle East Center for this evening. We're really excited to sit in on a discussion and a conversation between Qaanitah Hunter and Rana Ayyub. I'd like to introduce them both. Qaanitah Hunter is an award-winning political journalist with the Sunday Times in Johannesburg. Her writing on South African politics and investigations feature prominently on the front pages of the Sunday Times and set the agenda in the country. She has reported fearlessly on state capture, the Zuma years, and the political transition thereafter. Qaanitah's constant probing and investigations has played a pivotal role in holding truth to power. In 2019, she became the youngest person to be awarded the Nat Nakasa Award for brave and courageous journalism. The judges of the award commended her for showing integrity and reporting fearlessly. Qaanitah's accolades include Vodacom Journalist of the Year in 2016 and 2017, both regionally and nationally. She was also the runner-up in the Taco Caper Award for Investigative Journalism in 2016. Her political analysis and commentary on current affairs and politics has featured prominently on many platforms, including the SABC, ENCA, and Talk Radio 702. She has also previously written for the Daily Maverick and the Mail and Guardian. In 2017, Qaanitah was featured on the Young Independence list of 100 influential youth as a disruptor to watch. She holds an honors degree in journalism from the University of Witwatersrand. And I think sitting next to Rana, and as I read Rana's bio as well, you'll realize why we've brought these two amazing journalists together to have a conversation, and you'll realize that there's a lot in common between the two of them. Rana Ayyub is a prominent Indian investigative journalist and a political writer and an important voice from South Asia. She has worked as a reporter, editor, and columnist with some of the leading publications in India and internationally. Her pieces appear in the Time magazine, Washington Post, New York Times, Guardian, and Foreign Policy, among other publications. Rana's political investigation has been ranked as 20 biggest stories of all times across the world. She was an editor with Tehelka, which was India's groundbreaking investigative magazine. Rana has reported on religious violence, extrajudicial killings by the state, insurgency, and she's authored an international bestseller that is on sale tonight for 300 rands, Gujarat File, Anatomy of a Cover-Up, an undercover investigation. At the age of 26, post getting the first serving Home Minister of State Amit Shah under arrest, Rana went undercover with 8 cameras on her body, posing as a student of the American Film Institute Conservatory in LA. The sting operation was one of the biggest exposés of the role of Narendra Modi in the Gujarat genocide of 2002. In a career spanning 12 years, Rana has been awarded the Sanskriti Award for Integrity and Excellence in Journalism by the President of India. She was the recipient of the Global Shining Light Award for Investigative Journalism in the year 2017 and the Most Resilient Global Journalist of 2018 at the Peace Palace in The Hague. She has also been named by Time magazine among 10 global journalists who face maximum threats to their lives. Rana is based in Mumbai. The United Nations allotted 6 special rapporteurs to the Indian government to protect her safety. Last year, Rana was named as one of the 100 most influential women in the world. In 2018, Outlook magazine named her the Youth Icon of the Year, calling her a woman whose path-breaking achievements have been an inspiration for the youth of the country. Just a few days ago, Rana was appointed as the global opinion writer for the Washington Post. We are absolutely honored to have her here at a time when issues related to India and its politics of majoritarianism around Kashmir, Assam, and Gujarat are so prominent in global politics. And we can't wait to hear much from her tonight. We'd like to allow the two journalists to have a conversation which we will listen in on, and later on we'll open the floor for questions. Please make sure that you tweet, and you can tag us, Conscience Call 3, and you can tag Afro-Middle East Center, you can tag Rana Ayyub, and you can tag Qaanitah Hunter on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Please enjoy the discussion.
So should we start by saying congratulations on the new gig?
Thank you so much. I mean, when the job was offered to me, somebody said, yeah, even Jamal Khashoggi was an opinion contributor for Washington Post. So I'm
We
not
know
sure
how
if
that
I take
ended.
any of them as compliments, but yeah, thank you so much.
All right. So, I mean, you know, in South Africa, we are so inward-looking, especially even as journalists, and type of harassment that we get. And oftentimes, you know, we feel like what we are facing is probably unprecedented. And then I search you, and then I feel better about myself. But, I mean, talk to me a little bit about why you're probably one of India's most harassed harassed journalists online and probably in person. And I start with this question because some of the tweets that I read earlier today and in the course of the week, as I researched you, you know, left a pit in my stomach. And so that was the first question I had bottled up in me, is to say, what makes you so hated in India?
I wish they showed some love. I mean, there is a lot of love, of course, but it's not on social media. People send them in private emails because, you know, lauding me in public is something that they can't afford to do right now in the way India is, right? I guess I'm hated for the trajectory of work I have done over the last 2 decades. I've had a very, very unusual childhood. I've spoken at various events about it, and some of you who have attended the event will see this as repetitive. So I was born a cripple. I had a polio of the left hand and the right leg, and I was a very, very shy kid who I don't think my parents thought could ever achieve anything in life. So I was the kid who actually leave in the house saying, oh my God, what do we do with her when she grows up? And when I was 9, the Bombay riots happened, the Mumbai riots, which is one of the worst anti-Muslim riots in the history of India. And we used to stay in a very predominantly secular society where we were the only Muslim family, and I never knew about my religion. But on the 6th December 1992, when the Babri Masjid was demolished, there was a huge poster stuck on our door which said, let's go to Ayodhya and demolish the mosque. And it was done by our next door neighbor. And there were rioters who came to our house to gang rape me and my sister, and overnight me and my sister were packed off to a Sikh family's residence for like 4 months. So I've seen this at close quarters. When I was 19, I went to Gujarat to cover the Gujarat riots as a relief worker, and I saw what nobody should actually see. It was a sight that you detest. I mean, there were women who were raped in camps, almost like concentration camps. There were children who were orphaned. It was one of the worst sights, and there were provocative speeches being given by the BJP and Mr. Modi, who gave some of the most provocative speeches around that time. I felt very helpless. So a lot of the passion that I bring in with my journalism and a lot of stuff that I do is derived from the fact that I have seen injustice at very close quarters. That passion reflects in my work, and I think India does not like journalists with a passion. I'm not the only one. I should say there are many honorable exceptions, but the reason why I'm hated so much is because 1, I'm a woman. 2, I'm a critic of the ruling dispensation. 3, I'm a Muslim. And I wear my religion on my sleeves in as many words because I do talk about Islamophobia. I do talk about the lynching of Muslims in India. I do talk about the way 13-year-olds are killed in the country for regaining Hindu pride. So that's something I will speak about. And if that truth hurts you and that truth makes you hate me, I mean, good for you.
So when you were writing Gujarat Files, did you ever think you'd get to a point where Modi would then be in the US celebrated by the US president, almost being his opener to his big show, which is, punting nationalism and punting the anti-Muslim rhetoric?
I mean, I was watching the Howdy Modi event and I switched off after 5 minutes because it was nauseous. I mean, as it is, it's nauseous enough to see Trump and then you see Modi in the same combination. So it's like, you really don't want to watch this, and both of them patting each other's back. Till 2012, I really did not entertain the idea that Modi could ever be the prime minister of the country because, the country knew his role in the Gujarat riots, and I wondered, how would a man like him be accepted by a majority of 1.3 billion people? But then I was proved wrong. Clearly, my country chose Modi not despite what he did in 2002, but because what he did in 2002 to Muslims. And that also kind of set the stage for majoritarian hate in India. And Gujarat Files is reflective of that hate that I managed to collect in a span of 8 months during my undercover investigation. So when I see Modi today, I mean, he was speaking at the UN, and he invoked Mahatma Gandhi's 150th birth anniversary, and there was no journalist who, on his return, reminded him that it's the 56th day of Kashmir being under siege and complete clampdown of human rights. Gandhi would be holding a satyagraha somewhere if he were alive. So I like the way that he kind of manipulates Gandhi's and the Sardar Patel's to his, I mean, but there's a lot of song and dance. Modi is basically playing to the gallery. There are, his empire is built on fake news, public relations, PR blitzkrieg, his own PR with international companies. He does a good job of it.
No, absolutely. I was in India earlier this year, and a little part of me was tempted to say, what a great leader,
Oh, yeah.
There is that kind of PR that's in overdrive. But in your investigation, obviously, the biggest finding probably was the complicity of Modi in these killings. But what was the legacy that you would have wanted Gujarat Files to have left, or what was your, besides informing people, what was the change that you wanted to see, and has that been realized?
To begin with, I'll have to explain a bit about Gujarat Files. So I was 26 when I got Amit Shah, who was the Home Minister of India at that point of time, arrested for his role in the extrajudicial murder of Muslims. That man, ironically, happens to be the Home Minister of India and is the de facto Prime Minister for 2024. The Supreme Court of India called him an extortionist and a murderer. And that man today is taking these decisions. So I put him behind bars. I got his call records at 3 in the night in a graveyard when one of the officers actually came and handed the evidence over to me. And then I came back. I was working with an organization called Tehelka, which was kind of infamous for its sting operations. And I was quite young, so my editor said, you can't be doing a sting operation. What will you do? Why will people accept you? You are a Muslim girl. Why should anyone speak the truth to you? So I did a complete image makeover. I became this girl called Maithili Tyagi, who was a Hindu nationalist, who went to the American Film Institute Conservatory, who hated Muslims, whose father was a teacher of the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, a right-wing organization. And I did a complete makeover, straightened my hair, put lenses, makeup, fake American accent. And trust me, a fake American accent in Gujarat can do wonders. And also the fact that I had a French colleague with me. So he was an intern at Tehelka. He was studying at Choiseul Po in France. And I said, you want to come on board? I mean, I need a Gora face. I need a white face. Let's handle it. I mean, he said, okay, as long as you tell me what's the story. So armed with him and about 8 cameras on my body, there was a camera in my tunic, there was a camera in my earring, my watch, my shoes, my diary, my keychain, I mean, everything that you can imagine. And they would literally burn my body at some point. And for 8 months, I became a part of the establishment in Gujarat, the hierarchy, the bureaucrats, administrative officers, the Home Minister, Modi himself. And we got some of the most damning truths that even the commissions of inquiry could not find out. So when the commissions of inquiry would testify, would get the officers to testify, they would say, we don't remember, it's been a while. But on the tape in my sting operation, they would say that Modi did what he did in 2002, the way he killed Muslims, was to come back to power. It was said explicitly. The investigating officer also said that Harin Pandya, who was Mr. Modi's home minister, was killed by him, and the assassin was let out of jail by him. In an ideal world, in ideal circumstances, this would have been one of the biggest stories. I sent a mail to my editor and said, man, this is going to be on the cover of Time magazine because this is the biggest expose on Modi. So I come back and I show the transcripts to my editors, and they wait and sit on it for a bit. And then they call me to their office and say, you know what, Rana, you have done exceptional investigation. This is incredibly brave, but I don't think we should run this because it's extremely dangerous. We never thought you could reach Modi. And I just looked at them as if I was like a guinea pig who was sent for an experiment. I fought with them for some time, and I went to almost every journalist in India telling them my story, saying I went for a sting operation, it's not going to be published, can you publish it? And these are the top editors in India. They would all read my investigation and say, oh my God, this is really big. And I would say, would you publish it? They would say, no, I think Modi is coming to power in 2014. So eventually, I went to two of the biggest publishers. They decided to publish this as a tell-all book. And in 2014, when Modi was about to come to power, they all eased out. They stopped taking my phone calls. 2 years later, in 2016, my mother had kept some gold for my marriage, so I pawned it. And I got a gold loan and published 500 copies and kept a book launch at the India Habitat Center in Delhi. I mean, not expecting anyone to turn up because of the kind of book that it was. I mean, I booked a hall only for 60 people. In a hall of 60 people, there were about 600 people, all the top politicians in India, every journalist. When I said the last word, there was a standing ovation. And I started getting text messages on my phone saying, man, you are so brave. This is such a damning book. And I was ready. I said, okay, the purpose of Gujarat File is to bring the perpetrators, to hold them accountable, and to let the truth of Gujarat be known. I think that will be done. The next day I wake up, there's not a mention in a single newspaper. And but then by then I'd gotten used to the idea of self-censorship that the Indian media had started practicing. But despite all of this, I went door to door. I literally went from bookshop to bookshop, publishing physical copies and placing them, and finally ended up getting a distributor. And today, 2 years later, we have sold 700,000 copies in 15 languages. That speaks volumes of the fact that the truth always finds a way out.
So, why do you think there's this culture of self-censorship and just this almost reverence of the Indian press to the ruling elite? What is behind that?
I don't know. I think most of the journalists, there was a time when they were doing stories, which were pro-Congress and anti-BJP, and one would have thought they're secular. But most of the journalists have turned out to be pro-establishment journalists for whom journalism has turned out to be a 9-to-5 job. It's not that there isn't good journalism in India. It's just that bad journalism is making a lot of noise. And that's the biggest problem. There are good journalists who, some of the best journalists in India right now are consultants, independent journalists, contributing editors. None of them really have a job. And that's the price they have to pay. I'm not the only one. There are unsung journalists across the board in interiors, in rural areas who are losing their life. My colleague Gauri Lankesh, I don't know how many of you are aware, she was murdered in 2017 and the entire world got to know about it. She published this book in a regional language in Canada, and 3 weeks later she was killed right outside her residence. It almost felt like, okay, that's the message for me. They can't get me because I'm a well-known journalist, I'm on television channels every day, but it felt like this is the price that you pay for the journalism that you want to do, and not many journalists in India are willing to pay that price, which is why self-censorship is perhaps something that they choose to follow. Also the fact that the big media houses are run by advertisements and this stuff that they get from the government. They're not willing to let go of that. They need the big advertisers. So we do have independent outlets, but even they are being flushed out completely. So the stories the biggest stories actually that you come across in India are in the form of tweets that people send out, and that's where India is right now. I don't remember in the last 5 years if India has produced one big investigation.
So, in my spare time, I watch a lunatic called Arnab's Goswami, who is, for those who don't know, is an Indian journalist who is completely pro-government, almost a Modi tool, who's hysterical and, you know, everything you don't want to be as a journalist. But the reason why, you know, his YouTube videos had come up on my feed was, you know, I was doing research on you know, the fake news phenomenon, and he was sort of lambasting this fake news regarding, you know, the situation that's happening in Kashmir. And I watched with my mouth hanging open as this is mainstream journalism in India, where a journalist is effectively a politician, you know, furthering the interest unashamedly of Modi, being completely anti-Pakistan, you know, denying any situation in Kashmir. And I wondered to myself, how is this allowed to thrive? How is this meant to be journalism in a democracy?
Well, unfortunately, the man is doing what he is doing, and it's a spectacle of sorts because the majority of people in India are seeing it, they're watching it. Unfortunately, all the bad journalism gets the maximum eyeballs because it's a lot of sensationalism. And you know what, we're talking about a 1.3 billion population which has elected Modi for the second time with an absolute majority. Now, these are people who like to hear this jingoistic version of what's happening in Kashmir. Journalists in Kashmir are not reporting it from the prism of human rights. Journalists in Kashmir are reporting Kashmir from the prism of nationalism, that Kashmir is a piece of land that should belong to us. Kashmiri people can go take a hike. I mean, when I went to Kashmir 3 weeks ago, I mean, I went in a hijab because I knew if I went as a journalist, somebody recognized me, I would be detained at the airport. And I went there. There were 12-year-old children who were given electric shocks, and they were given electric shocks in their groin area, in their back, and they were picked up late in the night. There was a woman who's basically on dialysis. She's lost both her kidneys, and she could die any day. Both her sons have been picked up, 17 and 19, and she doesn't know about their whereabouts, and she thinks she will die without any of the sons being able to see her the last time. I just can't understand, if the international media can see this story and they're reporting about it, why is the Indian media not able to see this story? Because these are accessible stories. This is not something that is hidden somewhere. I mean, if you want to pursue the truth, you can see the truth. It's not very difficult. I mean, look at the number of lynchings that are happening in India. 2 years ago, a 12-year-old boy, Junaid, was traveling in a train in India, and it was the next day was Eid, so he was traveling with his elder brother, and he kept asking his elder brother, "What will you give me for Eid tomorrow?" Which is like the stuff, that money that parents give to their children. And he had got this new kurta pajama for the namaz, which he was holding, and he had worn a skull cap. So there were these people sitting on the seat next to him, and they came to him, and they started calling him landia, which is a cuss word for Muslims. There was something that they hit his head with. The skull broke apart. They threw him on the railway station, and the next day was Eid, and he was the same age as my nephew. When the news came in, I didn't know how to react because it could have been my nephew, just that my nephew is a more privileged boy, and he was at home. He was in an air-conditioned room. That boy, Junaid, needed the attention of the country, and the story did not see national headlines. I was reading James Baldwin a couple of days ago, and he talks about what they used to do to black children, and he talks about men lynching their brothers, and this is what's happening in India. It's where mob culture has taken over, where humanity has absolutely no value.
And aided and abetted by the man in charge.
Aided and abetted by the man in charge because it's convenient. I remember when he came to South Africa 2 years ago, he spoke about the Kachalia brothers who had a big part in the South African freedom struggle. Yes. For the first time, he took a Muslim name to laud them. How difficult is it for Modi to actually take a few Muslim examples back in the country so that it helps in communal harmony? Some of the people who gave us the worst death and rape threats in India are followed by Narendra Modi. That's the prime minister that we have. And I think, a lot of people ask me to basically differentiate between Trump and Modi. I would rather prefer Trump to Modi because Modi is far more shrewd. Trump is a fool. he's a joker, but I would rather prefer a joker to this man who is manipulative and he's marking his career in a way where he's building this huge media, this kind of glitz and glamour about Howdy Modi and getting Trump invited. At this point of time, India is at its worst. We have lost our moral compass. We are 1.3 billion population country which has looked away from Kashmir, where it is 56th day of siege, where 8 million people do not have access to internet, food, phones, and we are pretending as if everything is normal. And that pretense is getting to so many of us with a conscience.
And yet he says in Texas, Bharat mein sab acha hai, everything is fine.
In multiple languages.
In multiple languages.
Yeah.
And I mean, you talk about this Howdy Modi. We saw Trump introduce Modi as my friend, a friend of India, and a great American president. And I don't think there's any president that would bask in that type of, praise from that type of man, and yet he did. Hassan Minhaj, a comedian, who was banned, ironically, from that event because of what he had said previously about Modi, said, going to that Howdy Modi event would have been like going to an Ed Sheeran concert and then Bill Cosby showing up, although Ed Sheeran would have been a nationalist, Muslim-hating president. But, I mean, we can't have this discussion and we can't talk about what happened in Gujarat without reflecting on what's happening in Kashmir today, like you've made reference to it. And the scary thing is that there's so much has changed, so much has remained the same. So how is it that what is happening in Kashmir, can we say that it's a unobservant media? Can we pin it on that? How is history allowed to repeat itself?
Well, what's happening in Kashmir is something that is unprecedented, something I've never witnessed before. I mean, earlier you would have people who would be fence-sitters on the idea of Azadi in Kashmir. There would be people who want to say that, we belong to India, things are normal and we think we would align with India. There were some, of course, who are religions who loved the idea of, Allah being aligned to Pakistan. For the first time ever, I have seen hatred, the kind of hatred that I've seen from Kashmiris for India. And I am not surprised, and I don't grudge them the hate that they have for India. When you hold an entire civilization captive, when you don't allow them to offer Eid namaz, when you don't allow them to go to Friday prayers, when you don't, I was at a hospital called the JBC hospital. There were patients sitting with hallucinations. So I asked the hospital, the psychiatrist, I said, why there's so many patients in the psychiatric care? He said PTSD is common in 60% population in Kashmir. Most of them have been taking Stelopam and Mirtazapam, 2 antidepressants, for at least 10 years or 8 years. Suddenly that supply has been stopped and these people are getting weird dreams, they're getting hallucinations, they're reacting violently. That's what we are doing to these people. How do you expect these people to have these great sentiments about India? You cannot expect them. You have taken a decision about Kashmir in Article 370. You could have done that, taking Kashmiris on board. You're talking about every Kashmiri being happy. I need to know if Kashmiris are happy. Relax the internet and let's see for ourselves. Let's see for ourselves how happy Kashmiris are.
And I think that's a strongman. That's the tactic of a strongman leader 101, where you restrict communication so that you can create this false narrative, or this this scenario where what's been reporting in the international media doesn't exist. Obviously, Pakistan's leader Imran Khan has come out and made an appeal to the United Nations to come in, to intervene, to stop what's happening in Kashmir. But what do you see is the solution?
I really am the last person to recommend a solution, but that's for Kashmiris to have a solution. Stakeholders are Kashmiris. I am sitting comfortably in my upper middle class apartment in Bombay. I'm not the one suffering. These people who are suffering are Kashmiris. The decision should be there. Kashmiris should take a decision on what freedom means to them. Right now, the first thing that needs to be done is release the curfew. is ensure that people have access to information and communication. Do not deny them their basic fundamental rights, because if they are citizens of India, as you claim they are citizens of India, and if you want them on board, why is it that the Kashmiris cannot discuss, negotiate with you on Article 370? And then Mr. Modi goes to America and speaks to a few Kashmiri pundits and tells them, you're going to be back. Yes, that's a great gesture, but what about those 8 million Kashmiris who are there, who have no access to food, who have no access to transport, who are dying because they don't have medical care, there are no ambulances? Who will give, I mean, let's talk about those basic rights. I will not get into what Imran Khan wants, because Imran Khan has a political role there. He has his own political ambition, so I don't care what Imran Khan really has to say about this. I would rather remove the politicians in this equation and let Kashmiris speak for themselves.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, the biggest lesson that I could take from this is that when journalism fails, democracy fails. And we've seen this in the Zuma years, where when the institutions of state were collapsing, the only thing that held this country up was good journalism. So what do you think is your reflection on the importance of a good and ethical journalistic fraternity?
I think I was here when on the night that Zuma resigned after his long speech that never could end. But it made me really proud of the fact that a journalism organization and the Gupta leaks could actually lead to the downfall of a leader like Zuma. And that gave me some hope. It gave me hope that there are good journalists who are willing to put their life at stake. Ideally, Zuma should have been behind bars. In an ideal world, Zuma should have been behind bars. So that is incomplete, but that doesn't mean journalism has failed South Africa. There are many unsung journalists, there are many good journalists in South Africa who are doing great journalism. That doesn't mean there aren't rotten apples. That doesn't mean there are journalists who are actually aligning with the state. And that's true of all journalism across the world. You see what's happening in America. Despite the fact that Trump calls them out every day, New York Times and Washington Post and some of the biggest publications are calling out Trump and doing the biggest stories. India is an honorable exception. India doesn't believe in doing investigative stories anymore, which is precisely why countries like India are heading in towards a very, very dangerous curve, because there is a big difference between what, everybody compares India and America and Modi and Trump. At least America has robust institutions and robust journalism. It has a Supreme Court. It has the courts of inquiry which can start an impeachment. In India, the Supreme Court of India recently was listening to a case wherein one of the top lawyers in India asked for the reinvestigation into the murder of one of the biggest politicians in India, citing Gujarat Files as evidence. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India says Gujarat Files is a work of fiction, propaganda, and in as many words, bullshit. And in the 7th line, he says, I have not read the book yet. That's the state of the Supreme Court of India. You don't expect that in any other country unless, today the Supreme Court of India, the Chief Justice said, I can't hear Kashmir, I can't hear the PILs in Kashmir to get them freedom, because the Ayodhya Mandir hearings are happening every day. This is a country where Ayodhya, a temple, is more important than the human rights and people in Kashmir. So I am not surprised. India is heading towards a curve from, a lot of people think I'm a cynic, but it could be well beyond redemption. This is this land of Gandhi that we talk about. I don't even know if in 2024 India is going to have elections. I don't even know if they're going to change the constitution of the country and make it, instead of a secular country, make it a Hindu Rashtra. I don't know, because the way we are moving forward, you have the Citizenship Amendment Bill, which has been passed in the Indian Parliament, which says that all persecuted people from neighboring states in India will be given citizenship in India, except Muslims. How much more implicit can that be? You have the National Register of Citizens, which is the NRC, which was recently started in Assam, which basically removed 2 million citizens and made them migrants. That includes an army veteran who has served the Indian Army for 3 years. One of the reasons that he has been discarded and made a migrant is because his name is Sanaullah Khan. That's where we are in India. And Mr. Amit Shah, who is a home minister, has promised these detention centers in Bombay, and guess what? Mumbai, which all of you know is the financial capital of India, the most cosmopolitan city, they're building the first state-of-the-art detention center. State-of-the-art detention center for all the migrants from across the country who are going to be stocked there. That's where we are. And I actually don't blame the politicians of this country. I blame the 1.3 billion people in India. I blame people of Indian origin who are living in London, South Africa, America, who believe that, oh, that's happening in India, that's not our concern. I'm sorry, but that's also your concern. That should be, Kashmir is not a Muslim cause, Kashmir is not an Indian issue, Kashmir is a humanitarian issue where each one of us should be speaking. I don't understand why a few of us are speaking in echo chambers. I don't understand why we are only speaking to the converted. I don't understand why there aren't marches in South Africa and other countries which has seen the same history of persecution. South Africa knows it better than anyone else. You have seen apartheid. I don't need to explain that to you. I don't understand why is it that Modi comes to South Africa for the BRICS summit and there are no scathing editorials in your newspapers. So something is fundamentally wrong. There's a rot in our moral compass. Something is wrong. I think we are going back to sleep every night with a conscience that is not burdened by what's happening right around them.
Absolutely. And I think, what emboldens Modi is, growth in the economy, superficial things that have no real impact on people's lives and human rights in the country. And that's why he's able to get away with what he has. And so as I hear you speak, I'm cannot not ask you about the impact your work, your activism has had on yourself. If you could just perhaps share some anecdotes of how this, let alone the actual investigation of what happened in Gujarat, but subsequent to that, how has that affected you, Rana?
Well, the fact that from 2013, when I resigned from Tehelka, to 2019, day before yesterday, I didn't have a job, speaks volumes for itself. That a Washington Post actually had to hire me and not any Indian publication. Actually, one did. One of the biggest newspapers in India called me 3 months ago, or actually much before, and said, Rana, we would want you to come on board and do some great stories for us. And I was surprised. I said, this man really wants me. And he kept on going. He said, you know what, report everything under the sun, just spare the BJP. And I looked at him and I said, sir, I'm not into pimping yet. Because, you want me to report on the opposition. And you don't want me to report on the ruling party, which is committing these excesses every day. So I have had to pay a price. Besides the fact that when I did this Gujarat Files investigation, I had to change 40 SIM cards the year that the book came out. And the kind of abuse and the kind of intimidation that me and my family have faced over the years is something I shudder to even recount. Last year, the Outlook magazine gave me the Youth Icon of the Year award. And I was very happy, I was excited because some magazine in India has actually thought it important to honor me and respect me. So I got the award, and that very evening, there was a fake Photoshop tweet that was generated in my name that said, I, Rana Ayyub, supports child rapists in the name of Islam. And that tweet went viral. It was shared some 600,000 times all over social media, all over the internet, all over on Facebook. And some of my most well-meaning friends reached out to me saying, how dare you say that? My brother was the publisher of one of the biggest magazines, fashion magazines, and he got a call from his boss in Milan saying, how dare your sister say that? It took them a while to realize that it was a Photoshop tweet. I was about to get to, basically reconcile with the fact that, okay, this is fake news and I have to live with it. Another tweet was generated that said, I hate India and I hate all Indians. That led to a barrage of tweets that said, okay, let us drag you by your hair and take you to Pakistan. That still was bearable. I was sitting with with a friend for a coffee, and suddenly a friend of mine from the BJP, the ruling party, sent me a text message saying, hey, I'm going to send you a video, but please don't be upset at what you see. I said, what do you mean? He said, you're a star. I said, yeah, I'm also a human. He said, just watch it and delete it. He sent me the video. It was a pornographic video with my image morphed on it. And that video was circulating on the BJP's WhatsApp group. And he said, you know what, I disagree with you ideologically, but this is no way to treat a woman. And this is not how you how you target a woman. And I saw the video, and I can tell you that I was sitting in one of the most posh coffee shops in Delhi, and I was sitting with my friend, and I started vomiting there itself, and I went there, and I started choking, and I looked at her and said, what have I done to deserve this? And I was about to leave the cafeteria when my Instagram, my Facebook, my Twitter had everybody, every second was sharing that video, saying, hey Rana, we just got your video, it's really sexy, how do you do this? Every minute somebody was posting a screenshot of that video online, every video. As if this wasn't enough, half an hour later somebody doxed me, which means somebody put my name, address, phone number on social media saying, this is the girl whose porn video you're watching, please ask her for her rates. So every minute my WhatsApp would ring and they would say, ma'am, what's your rate? Are you free tonight? And by the next day, that video was on every phone in India, and including my father's phone. I called him and I thought, okay, how's my father going to react? You know, my father was a part of the progressive writers movement. So he could sense that something was really wrong. And he said, I know you're talking about, he said, I know you're worried about the video, but aren't you surprised this video didn't come earlier?
Wow.
And he said, this should have happened to you long back, because that's how they target women. When it comes to women, misogyny is the best thing that comes in handy. For 3 days, I was admitted to a hospital for palpitations. My blood pressure had shot to 200 by 120, I remember. And my doctors had to put me on a ventilator, on oxygen. It just got so unbearable. I've been on antidepressants since then. I wrote a column in the New York Times saying, I never thought I would leave journalism, but if this is what you think, if this is really what it is, then you got to me and I'm leaving this. And I sent it to the editor and they said, don't do this. I said, no, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm done with this. Because I've seen it time and again in my life. I'm suffering for producing this book, which is hurting the government so much. I don't know, what have I done? I have to take a loan to publish this book. I have put my life at stake. My friend who published this book has been shot dead, and now I have to take this. Sorry, I have to drink some water. So, and then my father sat me down and he explained to me, he said, listen to me. The reason why they are going against you so badly is because somewhere down the line you're affecting them every day. Your book, each time your book becomes popular, it affects each one of them. I mean, and I know them. He said, your work is affecting them, and that's the biggest victory for any journalist that can ever be. So I think I'm past this stage now. I mean, I still have, each time I break a big story, they will run a Twitter hashtag called Rana Ayyub Sex CD. And in that Twitter hashtag, they will be the worst possible tweets that you can imagine. But now I enjoy them. I really enjoy them. I said, you know what, bring it on. Because the more you do it, the more my book sells. So thank you so much for telling the world the truth about this book, because the world wants to know, why is a girl being targeted so much? This book is now being made into 2 films. This book is now, I mean, I have a New Yorker profile coming up. Thank you for elevating my stature.
So, I mean, we really can't talk about, you know, what you've been through without reflecting on South Africa and really seeing how this, obviously not on the scale of India, because South Africa is obviously much smaller, but how politicians in South Africa are using the same modus operandi to effectively intimidate journalists in a way that you self-censor because of the harassment that's ongoing, that's continuous, to the point where we are now at a discussion where we're talking about the mental health of journalists, because the level of abuse, the level of harassment is no longer, you know, sporadic or a random letter to your editor. It's now personal. It's now, you know, your picture, like you said, and we had some of the incidences in South Africa where, you know, an international PR company was weaponized, and they weaponized Twitter by attacking us as journalists. And the reality of that is that there's only 2 consequences, is that 1, we self-censor as journalists, and 2, democracy fails. That's the consequence. And the reason I would think from hearing you is probably why all of these wonderful editors in India would love to hire you, but really can't is because of this. It's because they are now successful at this. So, I mean, besides talking about it like we're doing today, what else can we do as journalists? What can we do to stop South Africa from turning into, the Indian model?
I don't think there is a formula that can be used by anybody. All a journalist needs to do is understand that journalism will never be a 9-to-5 job. That journalism will come with its share of risk. There's not going to be a good day every day. Whether you're ready for it or not is about your conscience. And it's about journalism. It's not just South Africa, it's anywhere. A lot of journalists in India tell me, well, you can afford to do what you're doing because your family takes care of you, you have no loans to pay, we have loans to pay, we have children to raise. And I just look at them and said, in that case, why did you join journalism? Journalism is not a job where you come to mint money. If that's the basic understanding that every journalist, whether it's South Africa, India, Philippines, America gets, some of the biggest journalists in the world have died in penury, right? There's no money. I today stand, and if not for this book, I'd be living a hand-to-mouth existence. But I'm ready for that fight, and so are many South Africans, I'm sure. What we certainly need to do is, senior journalists need to encourage their juniors.
Absolutely.
We need to build an atmosphere where it is, especially in our newsrooms, where journalists, especially women journalists, can work without the fear of them being maligned every day and them being sexually harassed every day and them getting death threats every day. You and I are living in cities. Imagine journalists who are living in rural areas. They have to fight a big fight to come into journalism, to join the profession. And then if their father sees a porn video, will they even allow them to be a part of this profession? So I think we need to build a robust mechanism. We need to ensure, we need to have policies, although I don't know how will that work because Twitter and Facebook are completely aligned with the governments of the day with superpowers. I think, I remember some of my posts, each time I post something on Facebook on Modi, which is very critical, that post disappears. So Twitter and Facebook are in cahoots with these leaders, with these strong men. So there's very little that we can, from which we can derive our solace from. The only option that we have left is that our editors support us and tell us we are right behind you. We have got your back. Because journalists work really hard. My editors let me down and I know the price that you have to pay for that. I hope no editor ever lets down their journalist.
Absolutely. And I have goosebumps listening to your story, and I think you're an inspiration for not only female journalists, but journalists who are every day trying very hard to not give in to the temptation to do the easy way, and that is to align themselves with the ruling elite effectively. And so, for me, my biggest message to you is to keep on doing what you're doing. You're not only doing it for yourself, you're doing it for women journalists all across the world over that face harassment, face misogyny, face a whole lot of attacks that are completely gendered and violent on a daily basis simply because how dare you do this? And I am tempted to say that if you were a man, your story would have ended would have been a little bit different. And so, from where I sit, as long as you continue doing what you do, we can continue doing what we do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for such a powerful discussion. I'm sure that there are lots of burning questions in the audience, and we take 3 at a time, and you can direct your questions to either Qaanitah or to Rana. Please identify yourself, and if you are coming from any organization, please also mention which organization that is. So I'll take hands now. Peter, Ashraf, and gentleman in front.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your very inspiring talk. My name is Peter Fabricius. I'm a freelance journalist, but I write for the Daily Maverick. I think the title of this discussion was Fascism in India, right? And I'd like to ask you if you could tell us what we should believe about the RSS and its role in Indian politics, and whether you believe you did say that you have fears for the future of democracy in India. Whether you objectively and calmly believe that democracy, the future of the world's largest democracy, is actually threatened by Modi. Thank you.
Thanks, Qaanitah, Rana. A few years ago, in July 2016, Modi was at this venue, Constitutional Hill, and he was given a red carpet treatment by lots of our human rights community, and people within the community in this country formed the Welcome Modi Committee. And many of us activists raised the issue. We protested outside. We were not allowed in this venue. That raises a lot of questions about the potential or lack of possibility for activism in our very own community. That same year, the Indian Embassy donated 2 million rand to the Qaanitah Foundation. The Qaanitah Foundation and its board members happily received that money from the BJP government, knowing full well everything that you've raised earlier. There are members of the board in this room as well. It was raised publicly, it was raised in community media. The board members refused to comment. So the question is, how do we begin to create some more conscientization in terms of the activism that needs to happen if we do not do some navel gazing on our own side? Because the name of Comrade Qaanitah is a giant in the field of human rights, democracy, and non-racialism in South Africa and globally. And if that is captured, you know, in the narrative of state capture, we also have NGOs that are captured. How do we then take forward this agenda in the face of fascism?
Good evening, Kenny Mawasa. 2 questions. The first one is, do you think, it goes to Rana, by the way, do you think a war between India and Pakistan over Kashmir is inevitable? I just want your thought on that. And secondly, is it relevant today to speak about, you know, national media, like Indian media, in the day where the world is really interconnected? I mean, your story is our story in a sense, and you get published in Canada, you know, you get a job in Washington Post, etc. Is it really relevant today to still speak about national media in this digitalized age? I just want you to talk a little bit about the future of the media. Thank you.
As far as the war between India and Pakistan is concerned, I think that's a sentiment only Mr. Modi and Imran Khan have. I don't think both the countries really are in the mood for war or can afford a war, and I don't see that happening. I mean, you will see that kind of, you know, muscle twisting and, you know, speaking about that at the United Nations, but the fact on the ground is neither of the countries can afford a war because their economies, the shape of their economies is at an all-time low. The GDP is at an all-time low. The economy is in a mess. We are laying off people. How do we afford a war? So it's good to say stuff in the heat of the moment, but I do not see a war happening between India and Pakistan. As far as the second question goes, yes, it's not just about Indian media. The problems are local, but they're also global in nature, because what's happening to me is also happening to, say, Maria Ressa in Philippines. It's also happening to journalists in the White House. It's happening to journalists in Erdogan's Turkey. So it's a global problem. It is a global problem, and it has to be addressed globally. The solutions are all global because Modi is a norm of a new world order. Whether it's him or Duterte or Bolsonaro, they are mirror images of each other, and they are pursuing the same models of intimidation of journalists, which is why we have organizations like CPJ, RSF, IWMF, which have brought out these list of tactics that are used by dictators around the globe to target journalists. So if that answers your question. To answer your question about the RSS, well, the RSS leader, Guruji Golwalkar and Savarkar, are leaders who Modi considers his guru, his teacher. And if any of you has read Golwalkar and his book We and Our Nationhood Defined, it talks about annihilating the minorities and bringing them and treating them as second-class citizens. It talks about giving venom to Dalits, which is the lower caste, if they do not conform to your idea because you are the Aryan race. So, this purity of the Aryan race that the RSS subscribed to is now basically being, imagined across India, because when you're lynching somebody, when you're trying to build a national register of citizens to basically differentiate between migrants and citizens, you are othering, you are actually retaining the purity of your race. So Modi is a face of this government. The RSS is the brainchild of this government, and never has fascism in India been in its more dangerous form than it is right now. I mean, they're talking about demolishing the Taj Mahal because it was built by a Muslim emperor. For heaven's sake, the Prime Minister gives speech from the Red Fort, which is also built by Mughals. So, I mean, there is a lot of hypocrisy there. Yogi Adityanath, the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, does something anti-Muslim every day. They are following everything like a classic textbook formula that, rules of fascism that are there in every country, whether it's fake news, whether it is othering citizens, whether it is demonizing citizens, whether it is strong man. So that's what India is right now doing. It is a fascist state, whether we like it or not. It's not the democracy that we once knew. I don't remember the country that I knew 15 years ago. And what was the third question about? Well, I think, a lot of time people call me activist on television channels, and I keep telling them I'm not an activist, I'm an active journalist. A lot of us can be activists without support from, you think that, okay, some NGOs are supporting Modi. I think even one person standing outside a rally with a placard is good enough if he stands with his conviction. I know we all have internal problems. I know there are people out here who might support Modi when he comes here. That's their prerogative, and you leave it to their conscience. But you can do what your conscience allows you to do, whether you want to protest, whether you want to write something. That's all we can do, right?
We'll take another round. Any hands? Feroza, gentleman here, and one at the back.
Hi, I'm Feroza from the Palestine Solidarity Alliance, and what is happening in India is very much to what is happening in Palestine at the hands of the Zionists. So with that being said, South Africa has had a very, very long relationship with India on different levels. From the apartheid days, India was one of the first countries that supported the boycott of South Africa, the apartheid South Africa. Now, so when Modi came here, many of us put forward a statement, including the PSA, of a citizen's arrest towards Modi. But what I wanted to put to you is, you said that we, Indians all over, needs to support or needs to resist what's happening in India. And I want to put to you that it's not as Indian in South Africa, but as South Africans, because it is a human rights issue.
That's what I said.
Not so much an Indian thing, Yeah.
Türkmen Terzi, Turkish journalist. I live in India between 2003 to 2007. So that time, 2004, I think Congress came to power, and that time was good, like democracy. So now what I heard now, they are going to invoke Muslims' citizenship. And some of my Indian friends told me, if you are not going to show proof that you came to India before 1947, they are going to revoke, and they are preparing the refugee centers in India. Like Aslam, I think 1.9 million they revoke. So is that true? And what Congress is doing? And also Indian Muslims, over 300 million, I think, unofficially population. Why they are not united? So what can be done? And also you mentioned about second question, self-censorship. You are living in India and you are doing journalism. In many Muslim countries, unfortunately, the situation is worse than India, like Turkey, worst jailer of the journalists. So we cannot do journalism in Turkey anymore. So as you are international recognized journalist, And I see many Muslim journalists, I'm not telling you, but they self-censorship themselves and they never criticize Muslim countries. So what do you think about that? Thank you.
I really am not here to represent a Muslim, my Muslimness, so I would not take that bit of question. I'm a journalist and I should remain a journalist, and I don't know why some Muslim journalist in some part of the world does not criticize that dispensation, so I will leave that question. What else did you ask me about? The situation now. Well, we are, as I said, we are building detention centers in India. Recently, in the local mosque, there was an announcement that all Muslims in India should start looking for their birth certificates to prove their domicile. Now, you have to understand that 60% of India lives below poverty line, where they don't even have a roof over their head. 50% of Muslims also live below poverty line, where they don't have access to basic food and water. Do you think they will be saving their birth certificates and their domiciles at this point of time? And so this is the most inhuman thing that you can do to a citizen. What's happening in Kashmir is perhaps the most inhuman thing, wherein what are they doing by this? They're creating fear and paranoia among citizens that today it is Assam, tomorrow it could be you. And how does anyone prove that my family or anyone else's family came to India after partition? How do you prove that? I could have lost my document. I could have lost my birth certificate. Does that mean anything, or does that mean nothing? So the number of people, the number of people in Assam who have been declared migrants are people who have served in the Indian Army, in the Indian Police Service. There have been doctors who have been living there for 30 years. Just because they don't have a document, are you going them to throw away from the country? I really don't think that's how countries function. That's how democracies function. Is there a question?
Rana, probably I must be the only Indian person in this room, right? I'm from south of India, from Bangalore. So there are a few questions I have about you. One is things about how they treated you in India. It's completely wrong. It's not supposed to be treated as journalists, and especially women. We are not a country where we treat women badly. We are, hypocritical. We worship our mothers and goddesses, but we treat women badly. And few things I want to say about Kashmir issue, or one of the questions he asked, and thank you for defending, Indian Muslims are Indians first and then the Muslims. Kashmir issue is more than just, it's nothing to do with religion. It's a part of India, and it's integral part of India. And if you see Kashmir sits in a very, very strategic location for India. And if you lose that, when you're gone with military air power and everything on that one, today it's Kashmir, tomorrow it's going to be Punjab, tomorrow, where will it stop? So I don't know, Kashmir issue has been discussed so much about that, and in a glance we talk about Pandits. What happened to the Hindus in Kashmir? What happened to Hindus in Pakistan? Nobody talks about that. Where is all the Hindus gone out of this place? Where is that human rights come at that time? Nobody listens to that one.
Are you talking about no human rights organization speaking about Kashmiri Pandits?
Yes.
I think I don't know about many people, but some of us stood outside Janpath way back 10 years ago protesting.
Thank you.
I'm not doing it so that you say thank you. I'm doing it for my own moral thing. And I think this whataboutery that, that didn't happen then, so we shouldn't complain then. I think this is a trope that we shouldn't fall in. What happened to Kashmiri Pandits was gross. What should not have happened? This was against human rights. What happens to Sikhs in 1984 was completely unacceptable. That was a genocide, which we haven't got justice for. Does that mean that what's happening in Kashmir right now, we should not speak about it? Just because that didn't happen, we should not speak about this.
What's happening in Kashmir is basically Article 370, which was a temporary thing, got extended for years and years and years for the vote bank, what Congress wanted. And Article 370 abolishment, what's wrong?
This is not about Article 370, sir. If you really wanted to abolish Article 370 and you're thinking you're doing it for the people of Kashmir, Have you heard of any country which takes decisions for its citizens without consulting those citizens?
How do you consult a citizen? You had an election and majority
No,
voted for the
you
election.
take a decision, you bring Kashmiri stakeholders on board,
had
and you
Jammu,
don't
you
take a
had Ladakh,
decision,
everything
and you
together.
don't take a decision and impose a curfew so that people can't even react to it. We are talking about democracy yet. India is still a democracy, last I checked.
In the democracy.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
We've
you.
taken your
Disagree on that
question.
one, yeah?
You've taken quite a long time. Are there any other questions from the floor?
I just have 2 follow-ups.
Sure.
So the questions have prompted 2 more questions in my mind. And the first is, do you think that the deterioration of opposition politics in India led to the situation in any way?
Sorry?
Do you think that the decline of the Congress party has led to this rise in this nationalism? How much do opposition politics play when we talk about a free press in a democracy?
I think Congress party is in self-destructive mode, and I think they deserve to be in self-destructive mode, because while they were in power for 10 years, I don't think they did anything to protect the secularism of this country. Congress talks about 2002, but conveniently forgets what its leaders did in 1984 during the anti-Sikh riots. As far as the Congress today is concerned, it's a party which wants a Gandhi at the helm of affairs, a Gandhi who's completely disinterested, who'd rather be playing golf somewhere. Most of the opposition parties in India, every time the opposition party looks to, strike and looks to be a possibly good opposition to Modi, the government unleashes the CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation, the Enforcement Directorate, and gets them arrested on fictitious cases. So if that's how, when you are using your power so brazenly, when you are targeting every possible opposition who can stand up in the country, where is the opposition? The reason why there is no opposition in India right now is because the Congress is the main opposition party, has completely lost the plot. There is nothing that divides the party. There is no ideology. As far as other regional parties that are concerned, the government is being vindictive against them. The government is being manipulative. Just yesterday, a Maharashtrian stalwart was called to question by the Enforcement Directorate just 2 months before the elections. If the government of the day is using all constitutional positions to target its opposition, then you will not have an opposition in the country, and that's not healthy for a democracy.
And so that with a fearful press obviously is going to rise to, to give the results that we see today in India.
Absolutely.
And the last question that I have is, prompted from the gentleman who spoke. How do you, does it not get exhausting, the whataboutism? Does it not get exhausting for you?
It is very, very exhausting when I'm asked to compare. But yes, this happened in India, but this also happens in Pakistan. I'm sorry, am I allowed to talk as an Indian and what's happening in India without being compared to what's happening in Pakistan or Istanbul? Can I just talk about being a journalist and my surname not be brought into it? It's frustrating when my religion is always brought into my journalism. And that's the most frustrating thing for any journalist. And I think one should name and shame all those people who bring the religious affiliation of any journalist into their profession. That has to happen all the time. This whataboutery is very typical of the Indian right wing, that if something happens, but the Mughals also destroyed Indian temples, so it is right that the Taj Mahal is demolished. I'm sorry, 2 wrongs do not make a right. If you are doing this, you are as much a part of the problem, which means somewhere down the line, you support that bigotry. Just because you have been hurt in the past does not mean you will hurt people in the present. In fact, you should be all the more aggressively fighting for human rights if you have suffered in the past. So this whataboutery just gets to me, and it's happening all over the globe. And it's frustrating because I don't understand why can't people see through the prism of humanity and see it from religion and class and gender, and why can't we just be human beings in the first place?
I think we've really had an engaging discussion here between Qaanitah and Rana, and with the inputs coming from the audience as well. We've listened to Rana's stories about how she came to write on the Gujarat Files, An Anatomy of a Cover-Up. She will be signing the books immediately after the program. And we've also listened to the rise of fascism without really coming out and perhaps spelling it out. But this is something that we've recognized globally, not just in India, the ethno-nationalism that is happening across the world. And I think it is something we should be concerned about. Before we end, I'd like to call on Naeem Jinnah from the Afro-Middle East Center to have some closing words, and then we just would like to present some thank you gifts to our guests.
Thank you, Zinat, and thank you, Qaanitah and Rana. I think a lot has been said, and Rana has spoken very eloquently. I'm not going to try to summarize or to add to anything that she said, except to thank her for making herself available to us for this evening and this afternoon and yesterday for 3 events that she spoke at in 2 days. And you would have noticed from her responses to the questions and her engagement that these are not easy things to speak about. They're difficult, they take a toll on a human being, and to have to do this 3 times in 2 days is a bit much, Zinat. We overdid it, I think. But thank you anyway, Rana, for that, and Qaanitah. We felt it was important to have these events because the question of, well, firstly, of course, the question of Kashmir, but in a bigger sense, the question of India and what it is and how it's developing as a democracy or not as a democracy are important questions for us to understand. Yet, this country, which is 1.3 billion people, often called the largest democracy in the world, questionably, has an impact on all of us. South Africa is part of IBSA with India and Brazil. South Africa is part of BRICS with India and 3 other countries. South Africa has good relations with India to the extent that we welcome their fascist head of government here and give him pretty good treatment. And I've heard that his portrait is hanging here somewhere near Gandhi's as well. So we need to understand what is this creature that we are dealing with as South Africans. And so we felt it was important to have this engagement over these 2 days. And so I'm very grateful to Rana for being able to discuss this with us and giving us the opportunity to do this. We hope that we will that this will allow us to continue a kind of focus on India along with other countries, and the Afro-Middle East Center, Conscience Collective, both of us separately focus on a number of countries in the world that have human rights issues and pose geopolitical problems, etc. We certainly from the Afro-Middle East Center haven't focused on India as such because it's not part of Africa or the Middle East, but we felt that it was important at this time to do that. So with those words, I want to thank you all for attending. Please buy a copy of Rana's book, and she said she's willing to autograph it for you. It's on sale for 300 rands. There's also other books there that you're welcome to browse and purchase. And thank you again, Qaanitah and Rana for this. And